So we're recording now. This is our third recording for six-step meaningful conversation training. And I have Mary Bias on, and she's muted right now. Just want to thank everybody who happens to listen to this. So six-step conversation, what we've talked about it a couple of sessions now. So if you're on this third session, you may have already been schooled in the six steps and maybe even practicing it with your friends and family, or maybe even practicing with your Shaklee prospects and members. And this will just be another overview in a different way about the steps. Basically, what we are what we're doing is enrolling people by creating pull energy versus push energy. And I think in the network marketing industry or in any kind of sales, the reason why people say, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, or I don't like salesmen, or I don't like sales, is because they feel pushed. And so the whole purpose of six steps is to find that pull. So it's the opposite of manipulation. It's the opposite of getting what we want for our own reasons. Enrollment in relationships is based on winning, and everything. When it's win-win, it feels good, and when we do that naturally, we always feel good. If we are getting, if we get what we want, but it's for their reasons. I mean, just a very simple example is you're wanting to finish out the end of your month and get to your 2000 PV, or you've got set a goal to get to a certain number of PV. That goal is really separate from your interaction with your prospects, clients, friends, family members. But what happens is we end up getting that PV goal done when we get clear on what their reasons are for joining Shaklee, using the products, getting better health. But it's because we've listened to what their needs are, and we service them. We serve their needs, and they win, and we win as well. So there's these six steps. We've been over them before. I'll just briefly go back over them. There's agenda, which includes global, specific, and yours. And really all that means is global. If you think about the world, if you think about more than your agenda, it's a bigger picture. So when you're meeting with someone or talking with someone, the global agenda is really the overall arcing reason why two or more people are together. There's an agenda that both of you have agreed upon before you've met together. And so it's either a phone call, they're either coming to an event because they know you're having one, and everyone's agreed that we're going to have this event at this time, and there's a general feeling of what's going to happen and what the agenda will be. The specific agenda is really about them. And we use the word specific a lot. And it's because when we say, what specifically would you want? What is it that it narrows it down to help them identify to you what their needs are. And so we often use that phrase, can you tell me what specifically you'd like to know more about? Or what specifically brought you here tonight? And it's just an interesting terminology, but it psychologically narrows everything down for them so they can get clear on what their agenda is. Because a lot of times I think that we have so many competing agendas in our life, and that's where manipulation comes in. If you are strong arming someone about what your agenda is and not allowing them to speak what theirs is. And then, of course, there's our agenda. And usually we want to promote our products, or we want to help someone get healthy, or we want to share chocolate with them so they understand it and eventually buy products and get healthier. Positioning or identity is several things. Positioning is positioning the time frame of the actual meeting or time that you're getting together or conversation. Positioning is saying how much time do you have to talk. Oh, I've got about 5 minutes, or asking them how much time do they have to talk. It's setting up the conversation. Well, do you have 30 minutes, and it's really to make sure that we honor their time. We're also positioning ourselves, and we're positioning them, which has to do with our identity. And we're sharing who we are by a identity statement. I'll get into that in a little bit, explain it more. Or we're edifying them and their identity by complimenting them in a very genuine way, something that we feel is important about who they are. And we often do a positioning too about our company or our products. We're the number one natural health company in North America. That's a positioning statement. And we'll talk more about that. Fact, feel, find is thinking, feeling, and knowing. I'm going to go over this in a little bit, but basically, and this is something I haven't really covered yet, but we have three ways that each person operates. They think first, they feel first, or they know first. Now we do all three, but we're going to be strongest on one of the three. And the way you can kind of tell if someone's a thinker, feeler, or knower, if they're thinking, they're going to kind of look up in their thinking. And so if you watch their body language, you'll see that they have to think about their thoughts before they share or talk. If they're feeling, they're often looking down, kind of toward their heart. And knowing, usually they're looking you right in the eye. And this is all based on this whole other workshop about thinking, feeling, knowing. So we don't have to get too deep into it, but I think it is very fascinating. And part of the fact, feel, find, if we can remember to allow people to cycle through this by moving from thinking, feeling to knowing. And again, we'll get more into that. Presentation is creating the value of what the agenda is, really about what you are there to share with them. And it's often based on fact, feel, find. You might have an agenda, but it might change once you hear what they need and want. Your presentation might change, or you might have the same presentation, but you would present it in a different way to them based on what their needs are. And then after the presentation, there's the next steps, which is three options, and then there's open, what's next for you. So let's get into this a little bit deeper. One of the ways to find out what their agenda is to ask, what is it that you'd like to take away that would be of most value to you in the time that we have together today? And if you start off a conversation with that, people pause. It's like, wow, they're not trying to sell me something. They want to know what it is I need from this moment and what I need right now at the time. If they're having trouble, if they don't know what their agenda is, you can help them find it by saying something like, some people in your position might like to know more about whatever their situation is. Like, let's say they've said that their children are sick all the time, or they have migraine headaches. You might focus them in on a specific piece of that you know about. Some people are more interested in this, or some people might want to know about that, and then that helps them find their agenda. And after they've talked a little bit, you can also ask them, and I use this all the time in coaching, and I use this all the time because I think sometimes there's always more. And when you get into the thinking, feeling, and knowing, if you ask this question, if there was one more thing you could take away from our time together, if there was one more thought you might have, or was one more thing you have to say, they are going to stop and think, what is that one more thing? And sometimes it is the key to, they don't even know what it is that they need and want, and it goes down to the deep, deep parts of themselves. And, um, and is just a word. If you'll just say the word and then you're quiet, they'll fill in the rest. And it's kind of interesting to play with that. It's summarize their agenda and confirm their agenda. Say what I hear you saying is that this is what you need, and here's what we're going to do. So in positioning, you're looking for a hot button where they can relate to your positioning, and that comes oftentimes after based on what I'm sorry, that comes from your positioning first, and then oftentimes you're looking for how they can relate to that. And in a three-way call, positioning is done by the downline. So the downline is going to set this up before the three-way call. You can position the upline and by edifying them and saying, I think you would really enjoy hearing Phyllis share about migraine headaches. She's been in the business for 46 years and she's helped a lot of people with that issue. Or I say this a lot. Phyllis Newman is the one that has told me that with GLA, most of the people that she's helped that wanted to get pregnant when they were on GLA, she helped them or something like that. I mean, whatever the positioning is that that they're interested in, you edify and set that up prior to a three-way call. Since we last talked is another way to get into positioning, and positioning yourself. Some people know me as, or what people say about me, is a great way to share your own identity. So, for example, what Mary might say to some people know me as Natural Nurse Mary, and I have helped people get healthy. Or some people know me as the leader that has a lot of artists and actors in her organization. Or some people know me as, as a yoga instructor who also integrates health and wellness in my business. Whatever your identity is, it's nice to share what other people have said about you instead of just saying, this is who I am. And of course, concise and clear to create trust and credibility. So this is where 80% of our time should be spent in a conversation, is the fact, feel, find. They misspelled curiosity. I'm just realizing that. I'll have to change that. You want to operate with the context and be interested. And the key is to listen. I like to ask permission to take notes. I love it when I'm on the phone because I'm taking notes like mad. but when I'm with someone, they like it when you take notes, and then you have those notes, and you can reflect back to them what they said, especially at the end. And it's good for you to remember and keep those notes and keep track of them. This is also where we move people from a thinking space to a feeling space to a knowing space. And I don't think we're really moving them from a thinking, feeling, or knowing. I think they move themselves. I think if people just share their from what's going on with them, they will cycle through these places. If you just give them space and time, they'll empty their cup. And the best way to get them to do that is just to ask them to tell me more about that. And especially if you're not really clear on what they're sharing with you. So, for example, well, Mary, just today, when you were sharing about the structure of how you were doing your in-homes, and I just asked you to tell me more about that. Sometimes we make assumptions that we know what they're going to say, and we do that all the time in life. And if we just remember to ask, tell me a little bit more about that, and then we be quiet and really listen, we're going to learn a lot. And
You know what's really funny about that is even it took me probably 5 years of marriage to realize that when I said something, I thought my husband heard what I intended I was saying,
uh,
but when I actually heard him repeating back to other people that like just, like I don't know, something that I did the other day, when I actually heard him telling back my story to other people, I realized that 90% of the time he has no idea what I'm talking about.
that's pretty funny. That is pretty funny. And it is just about that listening, you know? And and the way you can find out if there's an uncertain context, you can ask a specific question. So is it, especially if they're having trouble sharing, and this works with children too. So is it more about this or more about that for you? So whatever they are trying to share, and there's some, maybe some confusion, or you're trying to help them find what's really true for them, you ask that question. So is it more about blank or more about blank? And then I always like to say, so what I hear you're saying is, and then I repeat it back. Sometimes I use my own languaging, and but many times I just repeated as verbatim what they said. It's really important that people know that you've heard them. Can you think of any examples right now, Mary, of how you've used fact, feel, find in a conversation with one of your Shackley members or friends and family?
Um, you know, Probably honestly a good one would be Joe.
Mhm.
Um, because he was an unbeliever. He was a skeptic. And so talking to him about, just something as simple as his allergy symptoms, and then continuing to talk to him about those, and then following up with him later about it, and asking him, so when was the last time you had any of your symptoms? You could see the lights clicking on, and
Mhm.
him going, oh, now that you mention it. And so, but I think a good place, if people haven't listened to the second series in this, a really good example of the fact feel find would have been my misstep with my mother, and not doing the fact feel find deep enough, like you had mentioned, to truly get to what her underlying deep need was.
Mhm.
I didn't continue on, and actually I wrote down the phrasing that you gave during that webinar of, if if you were to put a price value on feeling better, or if you were to put a price value on how you feel right now, what amount of money would that be? And I thought that was a really good way for them to quantify how poorly they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, I think, a really good fact feel find tip that you shared that I'm going to definitely be using in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you see Patty's on?
Oh no, I didn't. So Patty, hi. I,
Hi.
would you like to weigh in on any examples, or because you've done an incredible job with your conversations and moving people into product use, taking plenty of time with them. So, do you have anything that you'd like to share with what's worked for
Um, I, I might want to think about it a little bit. I, it's definitely coming, easier with each meeting that I have with people. And as you know, I like kind of to be one-on-one a lot of times, and it just ends up that way. But, I've just found that when I start and I just start asking questions, and it's not necessarily about anything that we're going to talk about, but I mean, you like to spend, if I have the time, 20 minutes or so just talking and finding out what's going on in their life and with their kids and that kind of stuff. So that seems to get people to really relax, and then it's like they don't really even notice when you start to um, guide the conversation to where we actually want it to go.
Mhm. So, what you're doing at that point is you're spending 20 minutes where 80% of the time is all about them, and it's open ended. And you don't have to get into taking notes or anything at that point, really. I mean, and then what's happening then to them is they are moving. If they're a thinker, they're thinking, and then they're feeling and they're knowing. If they're knower, they're going from knowing to feeling to thinking. If they're feeling, they start with feeling, they might go to knowing and end up thinking. So all of those three ways of behaving, or three ways of operating and expressing, have been shared in that 20 minutes, whether you're realizing it or not. They have emptied their cup, and you've found out about them. And it's a natural thing. We want to know about each other. And it's the curiosity that you have for knowing about them, and you're interested in them, which is really, there's just no, that's not rocket science, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then we move to the presentation itself, and this is the time that you provide a solution to their needs. And this is really based on either questions that you've asked them in fact they'll find specifically, or maybe what comes up. Oftentimes, the three subjects that come up for people when you're just giving them an opportunity to talk, or you ask about their family or their children or what's going on in their lives, is something to do with health and wellness. It's amazing if you'll just listen. Would you find that do you find that to be true, Patty?
Yes, I have.
And then other times it's stress. Some could be stress over economics or family finances, and sometimes people don't. Depending on your relationship and how many conversations you've had with them, they're not necessarily going to come out and talk about that. But if you spend a lot of time with people over a good many conversations, that usually comes up. And then children and sometimes emotional needs will be present. Um, so the presentation, and this sometimes can be confusing. It's not, it can be formal, it can be informal, it can just be a small idea, but basically it's the solution to their needs. And this is something that's interesting, to aim first at the thinking. So you're actually giving them some data and numbers and statistics. And if you look at a lot of the Shackley PowerPoint presentations, they kind of start with fact, feel, find, because they're asking questions. I mean, the one I'm going to do tomorrow that I'm putting together based on the Shackley PowerPoint, I mean, they've really kind of, learned from the masters in what works, is they're asking lots of questions about their family and their wants and their needs. And then we start on data and numbers and statistics. And then the second is the feeling, the emotion around the stories that create pictures that connect to their heart. And again, that's that looking down that can happen. And then finally, instinctual, calm, decision, facts. You can, if you look right in the eye, that's the knowing piece. Now, you don't always present in that way where you can look people in the eye. Oftentimes you're on the phone. Sometimes you're in a large group setting, and so you can't look at everyone, but you might hone in on one person. But this is just an interesting formula of thinking, feeling, and knowing that it is kind of the backdrop to what's going on here as people are taking in information and absorbing it through either a thinking format, a feeling format, or a knowing format, and all three at some point. And once you've done the presentation, then the key is to just be quiet. And that's probably a hard thing to do for many people, because we want to keep talking. And that's when it's time to let them absorb the solution, absorb what you've shared with them, and give them some room to decide what the next step is, which is action. Sometimes they don't know, and so you can speak it. In my experience, this is what I've done, or I feel like the next step for you, based on what you told me, are, you can, or there's, based on, a lot of times I like to ask questions about their budget, where they're spending money. Have they used nutritional products before, or if it's cleaning and laundry products, can I show you how you could save some money? There's 3 choices: good, better, best. And I feel like the next step for you would be to look at these choices and see what fits for you. Sometimes it's not even time to get into choices of products, but it's just a next step, an exposure tool. And that would be a video or a 3-way call. I'd like to connect you to someone who can share more with you, who has more experience than me, or who has had this experience with this particular issue. Or you ask them, what do you think the next steps can be? And again, each next step is going to be based on, if you go back to the first, what is it that they would like to take away that's going to be the most value to them? And they've shared that with you. And then you've moved through positioning Shackley, positioning them, edifying them, sharing your identity, finding out more, fact, feel, find, going in, and then you present based on what they said. And then the final, each next step is going to be based on what they asked for in the agenda in the first place, and what you heard it was all about for them. And they're going to...
I think that for a lot of the people that are going to be watching this, okay, all right, shh. And because this was true for me. I think it was so overwhelming to me. It was like this algorithm that you had to figure out. But I just wanted to to say that really when you've been practicing for a little while, the next step, um, it gets easier. Each time you practice it, it's a little bit easier to read and to anticipate what you think that they'll need. And like you said, it's completely fine to ask them, what would you like our next steps to be? You know, would you like for me to send you a little bit more education about how protein can help with weight loss? Or, you know, would you like to speak to somebody who has a similar story to you and see what worked best for them? And then two, the debrief. I don't know if you're going to talk about that later on today, but the debrief with your upline after your first couple of encounters also helps with figuring out, you know, what the next steps could be or could have been, or and just helping you process through your conversation that you just had, because that's how you get better, is talking to somebody about the conversation and seeing what they would have done and getting ideas for next time.
And Mary, one of the things that I would really encourage your people that are listening to this do, because it is complicated. We're kind of breaking it down, which we didn't do as much before, into these minutiae of steps. But if once you've kind of looked at it a couple of times, the most important thing is to be on a three-way call where you hear Mary do this with your prospect. That's really where we learn this. It's an on-the-job training kind of thing. Yes, and we practice it, like Mary says, and then come back and report in. But ideally, you're going to hear take someone through these steps and go, oh, that's what it is. And so many times it's just it's just something you're already doing naturally. So that's what I would suggest, is have a couple of opportunities where your Shaklee leader will demonstrate this for you. Open is just designed to set up the next touch point or action step and confirm the next point of contact. Key is to get an agreement on time, maybe within the week or as soon as possible. If you're going to send them a video or an email or ask them to go to a webinar, just say what time would be good for you, because all of those are actual appointments. And you want to make sure you know when they're going to watch that webinar, when they're going to see the video, and can I call you right after so I can find out what you thought. And you don't want to leave it hanging. And kind of keep the line tight. Do y'all have anything that you want to share about this in your experience? Okay.
I have a failed experience. I
I
don't know if you want
Yeah.
to talk through one of those and say what we could have done better. It was one of my very, very first ones, and it was with a girl from high school, and I thought it was going so well. Like, I was like, oh man, this is like gold, you know, it's a sure thing. And she's a nurse, and she's so dissatisfied with her work. She was so dissatisfied. And when we were talking, she went from the beginning of nursing school all the way up until how she's quitting, you know, her job, and just, you know, how she lost her passion for what she was doing, and it wasn't what she thought. And so I was like, oh, this is the perfect.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm sorry?
So you spend a good deal of time listening and staying, in fact, we'll find through this story of hers.
Oh my goodness, like an hour. I mean, it was, you know, and I mean, she was talking about it all, and the whole time I was just listening and just listening, and then so I presented, you know, and I told her, well, I don't know if you know this about me, but, you know, I'm just now starting my Shaklee business, and it, you know, as a nurse, I love that it gives me the opportunity to help people and to use my nursing knowledge, and you know, blah, blah, blah. And I said, there's a really great webinar. Would it be okay if I sent it to you about how Shaklee is the perfect job for a nurse? And she's like, yeah, sure, send it to me. And so I sent it to her, and then I asked if I could follow up with her, and never could get her back on the phone. She never would answer. And I remember talking to Delene about it and having Delene debrief me. Hang on one second. Sorry,
That's
my
okay.
kids were adding in their 2 cents. Um, and so, um, anyhow, yeah, I never could get her back on the phone. And so Delene debriefed me after it, and she, she was like, I don't know that there was anything that you could have done differently, but it still kind of bothers me to this day. And I still send her messages and texts, but I've never been able to get her back on the phone.
Well, and that's okay. I mean, one of the things this six-step conversation is designed to do is to really uh, find out if, we don't want to waste any more time. We know that person's off our list. I mean, it really is good to know that we're not going to, they're not going to let, they don't want us to call them back, or because then we can move on to the people that we do want to spend time with. So I love knowing that right away that someone's just not interested. A, a, a yes or a no is what I want. I don't want kind of a maybe or leave it hanging. Um, so I think it's good to know that.
Yeah, it's a bit hard, but Mary, I've had a couple of similar experiences, and um, Pam, I like your advice on that and the direction that you took it, because it was just giving myself a little bit of time and then realizing the best thing to do is just move on and move forward with the people who um, are interested, and if the one or two people who kind of disappeared on me, I keep telling myself, you never know, they might show up again, when their life situation might change or whatever might happen. So,
But
Yeah,
what
exactly. That's why I do still send her a text every once in a while. And I follow her on Facebook. And so I'll send her a text, hey, I saw your post about whatever. I love the pictures, and every once in a while she will reply and she'll say, thanks so much. How are things for you? And so I do keep in contact because I don't want to let that relationship fall to the side. And then, like you said, it's a touch, and who knows, in a year she may be like, hey, you know what? I want to know more. So,
exactly.
and the purpose of these conversations are also to find out, do we want this person to partner with? You know,
Yeah,
do we want
yeah.
him as a customer, and do we want him to partner? Because Shapleigh's not for everyone. And so you find out a lot about people when you ask them a lot of questions and when you listen, and you can often find out, no, this is not someone that I think is going to go in the right direction that I need this to go in at this point in time. And so it's really about being, um, it's like you're fishing, uh, and you're pulling up the fish, and that one's not quite big enough yet. It's too little, or however you can conceptualize this. Um, and another thing is that in each of these conversations, when you do them this way and you have this open, there's nothing that they can ever, you haven't, you've edified them in the beginning, you've shared with them what it is that's special about them, you've listened to them, which is a gift which most people don't give another person, and then you shared yourself, and then you've offered a connection point to go on. That's a wonderful thing to do with anybody. And if we just think of our job as just doing that over and over until we hit the right person, because it is, as they say, a numbers game. It isn't for everybody. And each time we practice our communication, each time we connect to another person, we learn something new. And really, all this business is being a master of that, a master of communication. And so we've just got this formula here to break it down, but before we knew about six-step conversation, we were just told by Dr. Shackley to go out and see the people. Well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? But he just knew, go out and talk to people. Just go out and connect. Go out and create a relationship. And and when you do that enough times, practice and practice and practice, you're going to figure out what works. And the masters who have done this for years and years, it's just over and over kind of failing forward and figuring out what works. This is giving us a little bit of a guideline so people can have some structure to understand that their goal isn't to get out there and just talk, and present. Because that's most of the time when I was in step 4, and I would never do anything else but step 4. And I thought that was the goal, is to do step 4. And when I learned, the goal is really to find out about the person, position myself, edify them, position Shackley, set up an agenda, and then just see what happens. The presentation, if you do these first 3 things well, agenda, position, and tactile fun, presentation is usually amazing. Aren't you finding that, Patty? Because I know you're a really good presenter. And is there something that you can think of to share about this moving into presentation?
Oh, gosh, Pam. I think going into presentation, my method is just kind of letting people know a little bit about, before jumping into the presentation itself, just a sentence or 2 or 3 about what the purpose of it is, and why I think it is helpful, and from there, as I go through the presentation, I just I stay with the content, but at the same time, I pause at certain places and share something that's relevant to what we're talking about in the slides. And I find, and then I, use eye contact directly with people, because people will start nodding their heads or even responding a little bit. And you don't want too much of that, because then it could take a lot of time, but it's just kind of little places like that where you're realizing that they're engaged, they understand what you're talking about, and they can sort of jump in if they'd like to.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
I don't know if that helps or not, but
that's great. And then the next steps are what's going to happen out of that presentation with a final, deciding when we can meet again, or what we can do again, or placing the order, or getting them set up. And this can happen even in new member orientations. This open is what's next. I think our time is about up. I just want to show you it in a more visual piece. And I think the top of this, the agenda, fact, feel, find, and positioning, is very fluid. It doesn't matter what comes first, 1, 2, or 3, agenda, position, or fact, feel, find. You can do them in any order. I see it as a more feminine kind of experience in that part, where you're just really, that's where that 20 minutes is, Patty, that you're talking about, and then you're pulling into presentation what you learned in that 20 minutes. and then afterwards we are quiet until they come up with 2 or 3 things to do, or we can help them move on to the next step of 2 or 3 things to do. And then open agreement. Well, okay. I think I'll stop the recording now unless you have anything else you want to share, Patty or Mary. And thank you all very much. I look forward to meeting you at some time in the near future.